Hello all of you beautiful hive scum, and welcome to another Astromax video. This one we're going to start our deep dive into the Genestealer Cult data sheets. So this is going to be a two-part deep dive. Part one, we're going to look at the bottom half of the data sheets, so numbers 22 through 12, and then part two, we'll look at 11 through 1. For this video, I've put together a very loose ranking system for these data sheets. Alright, so let's get started. Grab your broodkin, overload the fuel cells. Our time is nigh, and the day of ascension starts right now. Okay, so as I mentioned at the top of the video, there's a loose ranking system I applied to this, and I came across this ranking system kind of by asking myself 3 questions, and we'll go through those 3 questions for each one of the data sheets, but we'll kind of level set them all here at the top of the episode. Question number 1, is this data sheet self-sufficient? So based solely on the abilities and the profile of the data sheet, the weapons on the data sheet, can this unit do something, or does it need other forces to amplify it? Question number 2, what role does this unit play? Is it a force multiplier? Is it a melee threat? Is it something that can go sit on an objective for a few turns? Is it something that's just going to get in the way of your opponent's plans? Right? What function is it going to serve? And this is going to change wildly based on how you construct your list and what cult creed you're in. And then the third thing that I ask myself when I'm looking at these data sheets is there a better way to get the same result? Is there a more efficient way to spend the points? Is there a stratagem that I can spend 1 CP on and get the same result as taking a character for 100 points or something? Play the army that you love to play. That is always the first rule, especially as we get closer to a new edition. Build what you want to build, paint what you want to paint, play what you want to play, because having fun is always the end result that we want. All right, let's dive in here. Now, somebody has to be bottom of the list in this codex, and while I think all of these units are pretty solid, there is one that kind of sticks out as having never really found a home in any list, and that is the Locus. So he gets the dubious honor of coming in at the bottom of our list. A couple things that work against the Locus. One, is he self-sufficient? Yes, he is, but also no, because 6 attacks at a strength 4 or 5 melee profile, it really doesn't do anything in this army. So when we get to question number 2, what does he do? Well, he's not really a melee threat because he doesn't have the number of attacks, the strength, or the damage profile to really be one. Best thing the Locus has going for him is he's only 45 points, but that is the exact same number of points as a squad of Acolytes. So when we look at, is there a cheaper, more efficient way to get the same result? Yep. Squad of Acolytes is going to give you twice the number of attacks, roughly the same amount of damage, roughly the same amount of wounds, and also that unit is also going to be able to tee up crossfire and exposed for you, so it does more than just bodyguard. I wish it weren't so, because I love the thematics of the Locus. I like the model is really cool. Next on this list, probably won't surprise anybody if you've been watching the show, but that would be the Abominant, coming in at number 21. The wounds are fine. The main problems here is that it has a poor armor save. It does have a native feel no pain on the Abominant. That's handy, but you're locked in at 3 attacks, and your armor save is poor, so you really need a relic to give you a better save, and there's really no way to get consistently more attacks out of this profile, which is too bad, because D3 damage plus 3 on his power sledgehammer is really nice. Looking at the next unit on this list, which is the Aberrants, and depending on what cult you're running, you can tool up an Abominant and some squads of Aberrants to be extremely lethal and extremely I don't know about extremely lethal, but durable, extremely annoying, and extremely useful in a list. But that's a great example of how you have to kind of tool your list around that. Raw data sheets alone, the Abominant and the Aberrants don't really get there. Number 19 on our list might be surprising to some or many of you out there, so be patient and bear with me as we break this down, but I actually have the Patriarch ranked as 19 out of 22 data sheets in this book, and that's for a couple of reasons. Definitely needs relics and traits to support it. On top of that, you don't really get any useful auras out of it. There's really nothing that amplifies the strength and power of your army. It's a very expensive model, so you're going to pay 140 points to cast 2 psychic powers, get a decent number of attacks, but that toughness 5 means as soon as you get hit back in melee, you're pretty much done for. And the fact that 4+ is the best save you can hope for, unless, cover can get you into 3. There's really not a lot that the Patriarch can do coming into question number 3 that can't be achieved for fewer points elsewhere. 140 points is an entire tooled up squad of acolytes. So there's a lot of ways you can invest that 140 points to get the same results and not have to use the warlord trait or the relic to amplify your Patriarch. There are ways to make the Patriarch extremely useful. If you are running a cult like Rusted Claw or Twisted Helix, there's some great equipment pieces you can put on the Patriarch to make him better. You get access to some really nice psychic powers that help amplify the Patriarch as well. But just looking at what's on the data sheet all by its lonesome, the Patriarch doesn't make it into a lot of lists for me these days. At number 18, and this one was really tricky. I struggled with where to put some of these characters in that are in this codex, because on Datasheet alone, some of them are kind of meh, but then knowing that there's, a relic you can equip them with that's going to skyrocket them up the boards makes it kind of hard to put them down here. And this first character is definitely one of those. That would be the Reductus Saboteur, because she doesn't have Crossfire on her datasheet, is a big blow against her. And that's why she's coming in at number 18. You can give her the Oppressor's Bane, which now she does have Crossfire, and now she becomes wildly more useful and can interact in a bunch of different ways with your army. Now, her explosive, her 24-inch ranged explosive weapons profile, it's Assault 2d3, so you can get quite a lot of shots out of it. It's Strength 8, AP -3. It's 1 damage against infantry, but if you're targeting vehicles and monsters, it goes to 3 damage. There are not a lot of Strength 8, AP -3, 3 damage weapons in this book. And, knights, big vehicles exist, so having something that can get potentially 6 Strength 8, AP -3, 3 damage shots is handy. It's the ability to take the Oppressor's Bane relic, though, to now get +1 to wound if those targets are exposed from the Crossfire keyword, or +1 to hit, or to tee up other units to get that, really makes the Saboteur shoot up the board quite a lot, as I mentioned. Up next, we have a unit that was absolutely everywhere in 8th edition, and has steadily become less and less relevant as 9th edition has wound down. But we're looking at the Ridgerunner, the Achilles Ridgerunner. Now, there are a few things here that do make it stand out still and can still give it quite a lot of usefulness. When we talk about, is it self-sufficient? It's not core, so there is that bummer to it. But it has a nice profile. It's fast. It's, for this army, tough. It's got a nice wound count. It's got a pretty decent armor save. It can get an invulnerable save with some equipment tech that is not a big point investment. It has several different weapons options. My personal favorite is the missile launchers. I just like that profile. I like that you get more a guaranteed number of shots and a guaranteed number of damage with it. The mining lasers, the heavy mining lasers, tend to be a little swingy for my taste, and because it's not core and you can't readily get rerolls for it, or kind of mess with that roll too much outside of Crossfire, I think just going for the flat damage and the flat number of shots wins. At 80 points apiece, they're expensive, but I find that I usually get enough value out of one of them to be okay, as long as I'm taking something else of a similar profile, and we'll get into that more with one of the next selections coming up. Actually, it is the very next one, which is the Goliath Truck, which is coming in at number 16. Now, if you're tooling for a mobile list that's going to rely on a lot of transports, this is obviously in the top 5 of useful data sheets because it's the only transport in the book. I'm doing the Goliath Rock Truck and the Goliath Rock Grinder separately. So we're looking at just the dedicated transport version of this one. The problem if you take one Ridgerunner or one Rock Truck or one Goliath Rock Grinder is that now, if it's just one thing, now your opponent has something to put all of their best artillery and firepower into. One way you can mitigate something like Eradicators for Space Marines and having these super deadly meltas running around everywhere is make them fire into squads of neophytes, right? Now, all of that damage, that D6 plus 2 damage, those extra shots, everything, all of that is just wasted on killing toughness 3, 1 wound models. Suddenly I have a Ridgerunner out there, or I have one Goliath out there. Now there's a target that those meltas can go into, and that thing, whatever it is, the Ridgerunner or the Goliath, isn't going to last more than a minute. So if you're going to take a Ridgerunner, take a Ridgerunner and a Goliath, or 2 Ridgerunners, or several trucks, just to kind of force your opponent to deal with more than one thing. Okay, and next up at number 15, this one is another one. It was tricky to place. I kind of wanted it to be in the top 3 of the bottom half, if that makes any sense, but again, it's missing one important keyword that kind of holds it back. This is the Clamavus. Now, the Clamavus does do some really interesting stuff. So if we look at question number 1, is it self-sufficient? Yes. Based on the abilities that are just on the datasheet alone, before we add in any tech to it, it comes with some pretty nice abilities. We'll summarize them briefly. The first one, it has a 12-inch aura of no deep strike. You can pick one of your unit, a friendly unit, and you can perform actions and shoot. So you get a squad of neophytes up to an objective. Now you can protect it from being deep strike. Now you can put a banner up on it while you're still shooting. That's a pretty handy thing. And then the other ability it has interacts with your opponent, and you're going to roll 2d6. If you beat your opponent's leadership, you're going to be able to either turn off that unit's ability to perform actions, or you turn off that unit's objective secure. So the Clamavus has lots of uses. Because he does not have the crossfire keyword, and again, needs that relic, the Oppressor's Bane, to get that keyword, he loses some points, and that's why he's not in the top half of my data sheets. It's why I don't use him all that often. At number 14, we have the Hybrid Metamorphs. Now, this is a difficult unit to place, as many of these have been, because depending on cult creed and what your overall game plan and strategies are, this unit could be way up or probably not any lower than this. This was a pretty conservative ranking for the Metamorphs, in my opinion. You're going to get 1 wound, you're going to get toughness 4, you're going to get a movement 6. Their weapon profile is pretty nice. They're going to get that +1 strength, which puts them at 5 natively, 6 in Twisted Helix when they really start to do some heavy lifting. AP -3, nice. 1 damage, fine. 3 base attacks, really handy. And with flamethrowers, I think it's 77 points for a squad of 5, so less points if you don't take the hand flamers. They have the crossfire keyword, they have a fight on death and melee kind of thing going on, which is nice. So there's a lot of uses you can do for this with this unit for this army. The reason I have it down here and not higher is, 1, the leap that this unit takes, depending on what cult you're using, is pretty drastic, which kind of hurts it. The stuff at the top of the datasheet list in part 2 tends to be stuff that universally, no matter what cult you're taking, is stuff you're going to find super useful. I don't think there's going to be any surprises as to what the top units are. Acolytes do all of this, and better in some cases for cheaper, because you can get the demolition charges. Oh, the other thing I should say about the Metamorphs is you can summon the cult with them, so that does give them a bit more of a survivability, because you can resurrect D3 of them every turn. The Acolytes can have the bonus of being able to take some of those heavier mining weapons that allow them to attack into more profiles without needing a cult specific thing to boost them up. Okay, number 13 on my list, and this is one that people might find surprising. Again, I could certainly see the argument that I have placed this unit too high, and originally I had it a lot lower, but when I looked at my criteria, my 3 questions, I found that it actually did check all of the boxes, and I had to move it up, and somebody else, Saboteur, had to fall down. This is going to be the Jackal Alphus. Now, the Jackal Alphus doesn't show up in a lot of lists, competitively speaking, because part 3, is there a more efficient way to do this? The answer is probably yes, but let's break this down. So you're going to get the normal Jackal profile, so it's going to be fast, it's going to have a decent toughness for this army, it's got a decent save. She comes equipped with a cult sniper rifle, which is pretty standard, but it's nice that it's 2 damage and she has crossfire and a ballistic skill of 2. So we're looking at an almost guaranteed crossfire marker every turn from this unit. The Jackal Alphus needs nothing in this. There's no warlord trait or relic or cult creed that is going to make the Jackal Alphus substantially better than she already is. She's great for setting up exposed because of her 14-inch movement. She's great at teeing up crossfire. Her priority target ability allows you to pick a core unit that's crossfire near her, and then pick an enemy unit within 36 inches invisible, and you get that unit gets treated as exposed. So she has a little treated as exposed going on there. And then because she's a master outrider, she's a little bit harder to hit with the -1 to hit. And she has a can't be targeted if she's not the closest unit within 12 inches kind of thing going on. So she's a little bit more survivable and a little less susceptible to just massive like assassin point giving up. And that brings us to the top unit in the bottom 12, and that is the Sanctus. Now, the Sanctus is an interesting one because there's 2 different build options for it. And one of these build options is going to be really useful, and one of them I've never actually played with, seen, or most of the time I forget that it exists. So when we look at the Sanctus, we really want to look at the profile with the sniper rifle. A profile with the sniper rifle, much like the Jackal Alphus, is completely self-sufficient. It doesn't need a relic. There is one you can give it, but the regular sniper rifle's fine. I don't know, unless you're desperate for extra range. Because what you really are taking the Sanctus for is you're taking it 70 points, I think it's 70 points, for a free crossfire marker every turn because it auto hits with its sniper rifle. Being able to, at the start of your shooting phase, pick a unit and just give it a crossfire marker so that everything else that shoots into it gets +1 to hit is really nice, and it's a really efficient way to spend 70 points because every turn that model is going to put in work for you, whether it's directly killing something or just by putting out that crossfire marker. On top of that, every once in a while, you're going to get the wonderful experience of turning off one of your opponent's auras, and that's just going to be great humor for everybody. All right, that is going to do it for our first look at the Genestealer Cult datasheets. I know this was a really fast episode. I'm trying to keep them nice and tight and not as sprawling as I usually get with some of these things. Part 2 will be coming out shortly after this, and then right after that we'll get our first sort of recap and revisit of all the news for 10th edition, because there's been a lot of that going on. So if you like this video, please subscribe. Give it a like, ring the bell for notifications so you know when part 2 comes out. And until next time, geek your own way.